everybody. Welcome to week 2, episode number 2 of the PressBox Party Podcast. Dave Benz alongside Tim Ring. We actually came up with a name for the podcast. Last week we were the work in progress. And Tim, I don't know that either one of us really had something jump out, but it felt right because we spent a lot of time in press boxes and press row. And we've also spent a fair share of our time at a couple of parties along the way. So it seems to fit.
Yeah, you know, we asked our social media followers to weigh in what they thought. Obviously, nobody got back to us, so we picked it ourselves. I think we spent about 8 minutes on it, but we have come up with quite the title. Yeah.
Yeah, and in our social media, speaking of that, we're on Twitter now, PressBox_party. I'm not a fan of the underscore, but PressBox Party was taken, so that's what we got to live with. By the way, you were in charge of the Instagram account. Do we have an Instagram account yet?
No, I'm going to get on that. We'll just start that right now. Hey, man, this is like my third different show. I mean, you got to give me a break. But I'm glad. PressBox Party, right? That's what we've come up with. I can live with that. I can live with that.
Yeah, so anyway, if you didn't check out episode 1, you can check it on the archives. Tim and I talk a little bit about our origin stories and how we got here. And, I think the goal of this podcast is to kind of, tell stories about people who are in the industry. And you and I talked about, hey, who do we want to have as our first ever guest on PressBox Party? Yep. And I figured we go right to the absolute top. And it is my pleasure to welcome in a man who I'm happy to call a friend, a man who I've known for well over a decade. He's got over a quarter century as the media relations director, senior vice president of communications, I believe is the official fancy title right now for Raymond Ritter of the Golden State Warriors. And Ray, thanks so much for joining the PressBox Party. It's great to have you on. And man, it's like people at home, I don't think they realize how much you mean to the Golden State Warriors, who become the dynasty, not just in the NBA, but maybe in all of sports, certainly over the last decade. And the things that you do, I don't know how there's only one of you, because you seem to be everywhere all the time.
Well, first of all, Dave and Tim, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. PressBox Party. I mean, come on, you can't get, even though I'm not sure parties are allowed in press boxes technically.
Oh, you've been in the wrong press boxes, Ray.
Well, that's why we had to take it to the streets, Ray.
You are correct about that. But no, it's a pleasure to be here. It can only go up from here in terms of the guests that you have. So I'm excited to be here. And same thing for you, Dave. I appreciate Tim and I just met for the first time, but Dave had always admired your work from afar and working with you your years with the Timberwolves and in the Bay Area. So glad to be on the show.
Dave, real quick, I got to say, and I was doing my homework today, like any good journalist does, right? I have learned that you certainly gave Ray a great introduction, but did you know that he's been called the gatekeeper of Golden State, but also, and this is what really caught my eye, the Michael Jordan of PR directors? Raymond Ritter right there, the Michael Jordan of PR.
What do they say? Director. Don't believe everything you read.
No, I know you humbly join us tonight, Ray, but we have to tell the people about how highly regarded you are in your profession. There is no question about it.
Well, I appreciate that. As I'm sure we'll talk about here at some point in time, you're only as good as the people that you're surrounded by, and I truly believe that. Dave knows that I've been blessed with the Warriors for many years to work with guys like Steph Curry and Steve Kerr and Rick Welts and Bob Myers, and just go up and down the list. And so we're all kind of a victim of where we're at in our circumstances, and I'm the most blessed person in the world to be working for this organization.
Well, here's the amazing thing, Ray. Like, I think about, my 10 years with the Timberwolves, and unfortunately we lost a lot more than we won while I was there. So a lot of nights we were getting, for a post-game interview, we were getting one of the players from the other team. And, when we would play Oklahoma City or Miami or, whoever, we're getting the off-brand guys. And we would come play the Warriors. And, during the KD era, you'd bring us out KD or Steph or Klay, and you'd have all three of those guys. One would be doing maybe national, one would be doing local, one would be doing, visiting, and maybe another guy doing radio. And it's just like no other broadcasts really ever get that. No other media relations directors will ever give you the star. And it speaks volumes about, A, how aware you are of how important that is to be able to put the brand out there with everybody who's carrying a broadcast, and B, the relationship and the cachet that you have with the players that you work with, that you're able to get a Kevin Durant to come over and do a post-game interview for the Timberwolves broadcast. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, you know what? I take really seriously my job in terms of trying to communicate to our players how important it is to do the things on the PR side, whether it's their standard media availability after practice every day or post-game interviews, either with our TV affiliate or the national affiliates or one of our opponents. And again, I've been blessed to work with a great crew and a great group of people who understand that. The one thing I will say is we really push our players here, almost to the point where I'm probably a nag for a lot of the guys.
3 minutes. 3 minutes. So we were going to do one of those 2 interviews we have on your calendar. So I need you to do Monday postgame, a meet and greet. And you're going to do that Katie Kerr thing after practice. It'll be just at the facility.
It's funny because Raymond will come up to us and he'll, come up having a general conversation like, all right, what's up, guys? Like, da-da-da, and just, shooting the crap and talking about stuff. Hey, Draymond, I need you to do this tomorrow. And it's like, Raymond, you could have just said that from jump. You ain't have to come smooth it over.
I try to make their job as easy as possible by helping them with whatever they might have, whether it's media relations regarded or for tickets or whatever it might be. It's you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back. But I've been very fortunate to be in a situation where those guys like to do things. And I would say, I take a great deal of pride in when the Timberwolves come to town or the Nets or the Mavericks or whatnot. We're all about growing this game for everybody. So certainly our TV crew gets Steph and Klay and KD and Draymond quite a bit. But it's, to me, it's important for the fans of Minneapolis to have a chance to hear from Steph or Klay or KD on any given night. So I'm just blessed to be in a situation where those guys are willing to do things. But I also understand, I think it's important for other outfits other than our local Bay Area media to have a chance to hear from these guys.
Ray, one thing you said a while back on a podcast with Andy Bernstein, you said, listen, I've been part of a 17-win team and I've been part of a 73-win team. But your ideals and your philosophies in the job have always remained the same. And that really struck me because, Dave and I we've had fortunate careers in that we've lived in a lot of different markets. So because we've done that, we've worked with a lot of different PR teams, both on the professional and the collegiate level. And at times, and this, we're not telling the stories out of school, sometimes when a team gets really, really good, the demands get so high that the tendency for PR departments are like, oh, we got to build a little bit of a wall here. This is getting out of control. But it sounds to me like, and this is what I've heard about you from everybody that covers the league, is that Ray is just as good with the media when the Warriors are winning the championship as he was when he was begging for coverage back in the late 90s when you guys were not winning a whole lot of games. I thought that was really neat to hear.
Yeah, I think from my standpoint, and it's pretty much this way, I think my philosophy on life's all about relationships. And whether you are winning those 17 games that we did for several years during my initial stint with the Warriors early on back in the late 90s, early 2000s, or we're winning 60 to 70 games like we were forced to do in recent years, to me, you always have to treat people the same. And does the day-to-day responsibility change a little bit in terms of the incoming? When we weren't a very good team, we were a very proactive media relations team where we're reaching out to ESPN and the Sporting News and whatnot, the San Francisco Chronicles, please come do a story on us. Now we're probably more reactive, but with that said, I'm really proud of the fact what you had just mentioned. I don't think your demeanor should change at any point in time, whether you're working for a great team or a bad team. The fact that I've had to work for both, I think, has made me a really well-rounded PR person. I think everybody in sports should experience both of them because you do have to handle your job differently. But at the end of the day, it's all about relationships. And I'm not going to – if I was helping someone when we were a bad team and they were doing stuff for me to put the Warriors out there, I'm not going to turn my back on them 5 or 6 or 7 years later when we have a really good team, because it's all about relationships and trying to help people do their job at a high level.
Ray, go ahead, Dave.
I was going to say, and you go above and beyond. I'm going to try the screen share thing here because we got this great soundbite that we found from Steph, and I probably put some video of it. So let's see if I can bring this up here. This was pretty good stuff from this was from last January, I believe, after Steph hit his first walk-off game winner.
I didn't realize it until Raymond and Brett played the best defense of the night. Trying not to let me go through the tunnel. It's been 7 years since they've been tested like that, and they failed last time I heard with Andre in Atlanta. And he got all the way to the locker room, and they weren't gonna let that happen again. So that's what I realized and kind of came to.
Were you really gonna run into the tunnel?
Oh, absolutely.
He's just too physically imposing to get around, or what?
Yeah, well, he brought back up.
He had backups.
Yeah, so that was what he was referencing there. He made a game-winning shot, I believe it was against Houston here at Chase Center last year. And he talked about Andre Iguodala made a game-winning shot in Atlanta. This might have been, whatever it was. He mentioned that 16 or 5, 6, 7 years ago. And obviously, Dave, having been on the TV side, a guy makes a game winner. You want to get him right to your TV guys right away for a post-game interview for the reaction. Andre literally leveled me going off the floor in Atlanta 5 years ago. Nothing was stopping. If Shaq was there, he wouldn't have stopped him. He got all the way back to the locker room. I'll never forget. I'm actually running back to the locker room, like, I need you back out here. Come on. And so we're able to get back out to do that interview. But yeah, our job is, if a guy hits a game winner, we're committing a sin if we allow that guy to walk off the floor without doing his post game interview.
Yeah, speaking of that, Ray, what did you learn in your young career working for the Lakers and John Black before taking that Warriors job that helped you facilitate the relationship with the player that allows you to have that relationship where they do want to help you and they do want to do interviews for the media or sit down with a magazine or sit with a local beat writer from Memphis because you guys are playing the Grizzlies in 2 weeks? Because what I have found again, I've worked with some great NBA PR people that the names, Julie Fye and Tim Donovan. I go back to Tim Hallam with the Bulls when I was really young. Yeah. But a lot of times, and you know this again, is they want to help you, but sometimes they're like, man, I don't want to ask him. He yells at me. He's mean, and that's where the disconnect comes because the players don't always take well to the requests coming from the PR department. How were you able to kind of manage that in your career to where guys are like, yeah, Ray, if you tell me to do it, I'll do it?
My stance on that has always been, even dating back to my years with the Lakers and now with the Warriors, is that it's about relationships, number one, but number two, I go back at them in a sense of what this means to them. So in the NBA, the way the money is divided is the players get 50% of all the league revenue. So I would say once a week I'll use this with one of our players, like especially the young guys. I'll go up to a young guy and say, hey, would you mind spending 15 minutes with ESPN tomorrow? Like, do I have to? It's like, why would you not want to? Because if you go and do this interview, and a couple little kids, I spent some time as a kid in Wichita, Kansas. So I always use Wichita, Kansas as an example. Yeah. A couple little kids in Wichita, Kansas decide after seeing that interview that Jordan Poole did that they want to go buy a Jordan Poole jersey. Or maybe they want to buy 4 tickets to drive down to OKC to see Jordan Poole play when we play Oklahoma City. The players get 50% of all of the league revenue. So I basically go back at them and say, look, all this time you are investing, at the end of the day, it's going to help you out. You're going to benefit from it. So I don't ask for like, hey, I need you to do me a favor. We're all in this together. And the more that you do and the more that you help us promote the team, you're putting more money in your pocket by doing this stuff. So that's kind of the way I look at it. And I've joked with guys over the years, like I'll have a young guy, again, will say, do I have to do that? And my response always is, you can go play for our G League team. You won't have to do any media while you're there.
I love it. I love it. Listen, these are great lessons for anybody that wants to get into that side of the industry. And it's a wonderful career, as Ray will certainly attest to. These are really good lessons, Dave, for anybody that wants to maybe get into the at the collegiate level. It's the SID department, and the professional level, it's the PR department. And I started in the SID office at DePaul back in the late '80s. And it's a cool job, and it's a great life.
Yeah, there is there's a fine line as well. It's like part of our job is you hear protect and promote. So we want to promote our teams as much as possible, but also my job is to protect Steph Curry. I get today I probably got 7 different emails from various media outlets around the country or local here that want to talk to him for whatever story they're working on. He can't do all 7 of those, and so I've got to, how do I massage those relationships to where, again, to me, it's all about those relationships. Yeah. those 7 stories can still get done, but maybe only 2 of them actually have a chance to talk to him. But maybe I can get the other 5 accomplished by putting them in touch with our general manager or a head coach, or send them some clippings from stories that have been done on Steph before. So how do you massage that to where you get your players to do a lot, but also realize we're also here to make sure their number one goal and priority is to win basketball games. So making sure we're not overloading them as well.
Ray, how blessed have you been to have a Steph Curry and to have these guys? I mean, listen, I'm not going to name names, but after a decade around the league, you know which guys are not, so easy to deal with, and it seems to me like, and I know that the organization and certainly your work with the players, and I know you work with them from day one when they get into town, and you start talking to them about all of this stuff, but. If you get a guy who's going to be a jerk, they're going to be a jerk. I mean, in some ways, you got to pinch yourself and be like, man, I've also had some pretty good fortune to be with some of these guys who are able to check their egos at the door.
Yeah, I've been really lucky. Number one, sure, in whatever 32 years, I had some guys that are difficult to work with. Yeah, I think we all do. But where I'm really lucky, again, the people we work with is when you have a general manager like Bob Myers, when you have a head coach like Steve Kerr, who worked in the media for a little while, was a general manager for a little while, now he's a head coach, was a player. He's seen it all. He knows how important this stuff is. So if I ever do have a guy on our team that really doesn't want to do anything, all it takes is a quick conversation with Bob or Steve. And again, you can't force somebody to do something, but they will then go sit down and have a conversation with the player and just talk to them about how important this stuff is. And do people have bad days where they don't want to do certain things? Yeah, that happens with all of us in all of our day-to-day jobs. But for the most part, even the guys that are rough to deal with, we've been able to massage that over the years. And just one story I'll just share with you to show you how unique Steph is. You talk about how lucky I've been. This was in Chicago several years ago. Every year when they announce the All-Star team, they announce it on TNT. Inside the NBA, Shaq, Charles, Kenny, and Ernie always kind of reveal the team. So Steph didn't make the starters. This was 8-9 years ago, before he blew up, where he had not made an all-star team yet. So we're sitting in our hotel room on an off night in Chicago. Inside the NBA is on. They're announcing the 7 reserves, the 7 in the East and the 7 in the West. They get through the East. The 7 come up for the West. Steph's not one of the 7.
For Steph Curry not to make that team, it's just a flat-out joke. Hey, I said David Lee should make the team. But for Steph Curry not to make that team, it's just a joke.
5 minutes later, I get a phone call from Steph. Hey, man, I just wanted to say thanks to you for everything you tried to do to get me on the All-Star team. Here's a guy that did not make the All-Star team that's calling the PR guy to say thank you for everything you tried to do. Again, I've been in this league a long time. Not many guys call and say thank you when they do make it. Here's a guy who did not make it and had the foresight to pick up the phone and tell the measly PR guy, hey, I appreciate everything you did for me. That to me, in a nutshell, tells you everything you need to know about Steph Curry.
Yeah, and Ray, you were talking about guys that maybe didn't really or don't really like doing it. I remember when Klay was coming up or young early in his career. Maybe he still doesn't like doing it. But somebody asked him, why don't you like doing media? And he said, I'm not good at it. So I lead with that because I wanted to ask about media training. Just a general curiosity on my part. Do you guys still do that as a PR team when rookies come into the league or with your young players and try to teach them how to deal with the media, the proper way to deal, the proper way to answer questions? Is that antiquated or does that still happen?
No, that still happens, and every team does it in a different form. So the NBA bylaws state that every team has to do a media relations seminar once a year with their players. You can use whoever you like. You can do it internally with your own people. For many years here, we always went with Bob Fitzgerald, who's our TV broadcaster, because he had done the 49ers and the San Jose Sharks, I think even the Giants for a couple of years, because they always like to, I don't want to be the guy always in front. Is like, they see my ugly face enough. They don't need to hear from me more about how they should talk to the media. So what we've done the last many years is there's a former NBA PR man named Kevin Sullivan who was in Dallas with the Mavericks from their inception for the first 20 years of that franchise. A guy who, when I was young in the league and just started cutting my teeth, Dallas was actually one of the cities that my boss, John Black, sent me to, and I got a chance to form a good relationship with Kevin. And you know how you bump into certain people throughout your career, Dave?
Yeah.
You know, probably broadcasters that you bumped into when you were young that, like, I really admire that guy, just the way he conducts himself and the way he does his business. And Kevin Sullivan with the Mavericks was someone that I really just admired, just from taking the time to spend 5 minutes with me prior to a game. Like, what does he really care about this young 25-year-old or 30-year-old PR kid? But he always had the time for me. Was just impressed with the way he dealt with the media. So Kevin actually left the Mavericks, went from there to work for, I believe, CBS Sports or NBC. Then he went to actually work to the White House. He was the director of communications on George W.'s staff for several years. So he's seen and done it all. So he's come back and done our media training probably 5 of the last 7 or 8 years, which has been great. But what we do, in addition to the one time, I mean, like right now, I'll be honest with you, we don't do a whole lot of media training with Steph, Draymond, and Klay. They've been in the league so long. That's one thing I want to be aware of. Like, Steph does not need to give me an hour and a half of his time once a year. He knows how to do stuff. But we have a lot of young guys on our team now. I'd say probably half of our roster is 24 or younger. Those are the guys that do need it. So when we do it this year, we're just going to have Kevin basically do a seminar for half of our roster. And then just during the course of the season, I'm constantly talking to our guys. Like every night when one of our young guys goes up to deal with the media and they walk back down in the locker room, I'll go back to them about something they were asked and just highlight, man, you really answered that question great. Probably every night I'm referencing something positive to one of our young guys of how they answered the question. And if it was negative, I'll go back to them and say, you know, next time you get a question like that, here's how I would answer that. And a lot of times with our young guys, we'll actually show them examples. Even during the media training, we'll sit down and show them some of the TV talkback interviews they might have done, or some of the Zoom interviews, or maybe a quote that was really good in a story or a quote that was really bad, just to kind of give them some examples of things they do well and some areas that they need help in. So it's a little combination of sitting down with actual seminars and doing some training and just reinforcing stuff with them every day in terms of the good and the bad.
Ray, I want to ask you about, you know, not every day on the job is the same. And, you know, you're in the job long enough, there's going to be times that you need to go into damage control mode. And I don't want to get into anything that, you know, specifics, but
let's say a fight breaks out in practice. What do you do?
I think I'm losing my connection.
No, what are the protocols for crisis? In all seriousness, when something like that happens,
I say the main protocols is communication from within, making sure all the important people are in the room. So, you know, I'm fine to talk about. You have a crisis or something negative that happens. My first call, and be honest with you, it doesn't have to be my first call. It's the first call that comes to me. It's usually from our general manager or our head coach or our president, and we all sync up. How are we going to handle this? And again, I'll give you a perfect example of where I am really lucky. We'll use the Draymond situation just from a few weeks ago. The day after it happened, our first media availability, I walk up to our general manager and say, hey, I think it's important for us to address this right away. No problem. Bob went and spent 15 minutes up on the podium. Our head coach, Steve Kerr, same thing, 15 minutes to talk about it with our beat writers and anybody else who was in attendance that day. Then I walked up to Steph and said, it's funny, every day we kind of pick a couple guys that are going to sit at the podium after practice. That day was going to be one of our rookies. Steph had done stuff the last couple of days. So I went right to Steph and said, Steph, after this most recent last 24 to 48 hours, I think it's important for you to be the voice of the players. No hesitation at all. Bam.
At the end of the day, it is all worth it because of what we've built, but it is a reflection of what life is. Like, you're going to have to deal with some stuff, and the great teams figure out how to do it and do it, you know, professionally and make it about basketball.
He walked right up to the interview room and sat there and gave him 15 minutes. And again, the next day, my job is to, when Draymond addressed the media, which is very quickly, probably 24 hours later, I will talk to these guys or send them an email with some of my thoughts. But at the end of the day, these guys are also human beings, and they know how they want to address certain situations. And Draymond's a really bright guy. So I gave him some of my input. But what makes me happy is when a guy like, number one, those 3 folks who went up and addressed the situation immediately within 24 hours of that happening, but then how Draymond, right after that, I believe the very next day, when he went up and addressed the media, did exactly what you should have done.
There is like this dark cloud in the room, and I caused that, so I apologize to his family and just what they've had to deal with over the course of the last 24 to 48 hours. And I will do what I have to do to make that right.
He was contrite. He was honest. I joke around with our players on occasion and say, I almost want some of you to get in trouble once in a while, just because then you can earn the credibility of going in front of a podium and saying, I messed up. I'm human. People love to hear people say, I'm human. I made a mistake. It's the people who do just the opposite. Again, I loved Pete Rose as a player growing up. All-time hits king leader in baseball. I think it was I forget what it was, 4,256 hits or something, like some obnoxious number. Loved Pete Rose. Well, Pete got in trouble several years ago and for gambling after he left the game, and he was a manager, so he was suspended from the game. To me, Pete Rose is not in the Hall of Fame today because he never came clean, or he came clean 30 years later when he wrote a book. Had Pete Rose came clean right away when baseball suspended him and said, I did it, I apologize, I don't know what I was thinking, Pete Rose would be in the Hall of Fame today. So those are kind of the stories I share with our players. Just everybody messes up. Everybody's human. Walk up there and apologize. It's not, at some point in time, everybody's involved in a situation. It's how you deal with the situations that you find yourself in that's going to define you.
Hey, Ray, what about something that's new to the last, 5 years or so? And that's, players kind of taking it upon themselves to do their own media platforms. On a large scale, LeBron has Spring Hill, KD has the Boardroom. I think Steph has his own production company too. But there's also Draymond doing the podcast that we all know about. But there's also the ability for any one of your players at any time. He doesn't need to call a press conference. He can tape a soundbite or two on his phone and tweet it out to his million followers. In a way, that's a good thing. But and also for a PR department, you lose a little control when your players have that kind of power to present their message to the masses. What has that been like for an organization? What's it like for a PR department?
Yeah, it's challenging. There's no doubt about that, and it's also a challenge from the standpoint of the in addition to social media. It's going back to, you mentioned LeBron having his platforms and Steph being involved with unanimous media and whatnot. A lot of these superstars now, not even superstars, I would say probably 4 or 5 guys on our roster and some of our superstars have their own PR folks.
You're so good at social media.
I'm so good at the social media.
So part of my job is to work hand in hand with their PR folks and try to assist them with their day-to-day stuff. But to get back to just the social media, I can't control, obviously, everything that they put out there. Yeah. They're going to do what they want to do. Part of our media training every year, there is a segment where we get into social media, the do's and don'ts, how to stay away from things that might get you in trouble. Because it's really, on the cover of our media relations guide a couple of years ago, the headline said, "It takes a lifetime to build a reputation and a minute to ruin it." And that's true for anything. You can spend your whole life trying to cultivate this image, and if you do something really stupid that gets on social media, and if it lasts 5 seconds or a minute, you can really, really damage your reputation. So our point isn't to be there every day and hold their hand on what they put out on social media, but just make them aware of just that sentence I just used. It takes a life to build a reputation and a minute to ruin it.
It's amazing how quick things can change. And I mean, Tim is a huge Notre Dame fan. I just actually finished the Manti Te'o doc on Netflix last night. And, not that he necessarily did anything wrong, but he got caught up in something, we all know about it. At the end of the doc, I mean, I was just about ready to cry. I felt so bad for him to hear his side of the story. So you're right. And he had it going so well, and then it all came crashing down. So it's, you've got to make smart decisions. You, by the way, Ray, you came in and we've already gone almost 30 minutes, so I don't want to go too much longer with you because I appreciate your time. But
no, Dave, I got 4 more. I got to ask him.
I got more time. What do you guys want to do?
I want to go to overtime. We got to go to overtime.
I want to ask you about your first major press conference, and I don't know if it was the first ever press conference or the first major press conference, but you get the job as an intern with the Lakers, and and all of a sudden, hey, we got to have a press conference.
The dazzling career of one of the world's best-known athletes is over.
I just want to make clear, first of all, that I do not have the AIDS disease, because I know a lot of you want to know that, but HIV virus.
I often cite that, like on occasion I'll have a chance to chat with some kids, whether it be in a journalism class or whatnot, about my career. And yeah, I mean, today's November 10th. So it was November 7th, 1991. I was an intern, and Magic stood up in the Forum Club at the Forum, the Fabulous Forum, as it was referred to, in Inglewood, California, and announced that he was HIV positive. And I was just an intern then, so to say that I had anything to do with the press conference other than being back at a Xerox machine and running off copies of a press release that I didn't write, but just being there that day, I look back 32 years later or whatever, like, oh my goodness, I could do this for another 32 years and never be part of a bigger press conference than Earvin Magic Johnson announcing that he's HIV positive. So yeah, I look back on that day all the time and say, wow, man, that was pretty incredible to be part of something that's going to remain in NBA history forever.
Real quick, Ray, can you recount the emotion in the room that day? Because I'm not afraid to say it at this point, because I was working at WGN in Chicago when that happened. I was already in the media. What we knew about HIV and AIDS at the time, everybody's got to remember when Magic gave that press conference, I hate to say it and be kind of blunt, but we all kind of thought he was going to die. Yeah. I mean, it was really tough. I mean, Ray, you were right there. That had to be a moment of emotional power that you probably will never forget.
Yeah, no, I mean, that, again, it's funny. Where it was held is the Forum Club, not like these arenas you have today that have big, beautiful interview rooms with digital backdrops and whatnot. We were crammed into this club there, and I'll just remember, like you said, the somberness of it was unlike anything I've ever been a part of. And like you said, when he got up there, basically people thought it was a death sentence.
Yeah.
Magic's probably not going to be with us a year from now. And so, yeah, I'll just never forget. I think somberness is probably the best way, if that is a word, to describe what the room was like that day, and just how everybody, on one hand, the Lakers dynasty certainly was going to end, but it wasn't about the Lakers and how good they were going to be. It's about this man who everybody loved and appreciated for his greatness, both on and off the court, and the things, what he meant to the city of Los Angeles and the NBA. And like we all thought, this is it. He's not going to be with us in another 9 or 12 months. So unlike anything I've ever experienced before. And with that said, I can't tell you how freaking excited I am to not every time I go to LA, but I'd say at least once a season we'll go down there and I'll bump into I call him Earvin, because I like to think that he's part of the family. And I get a chance to see him and just give him a big hug. It's like, that's what's so cool about it. I just look back at my journey and, like, growing up in San Bernardino area, like, Magic Johnson was everything to me as a kid, and to have an opportunity to work with him when he came back and experience the lows of that day. But now look back 30 plus years later and see how he is thriving as a businessman and an entrepreneur and starting all these great companies for the less privileged in LA and all around the world. It's really an incredible thing to see.
Were you at that All-Star game, Ray, when he came back and kind of that was his first real time back on the court?
I was not. That John was at that one, but the thing that I remember is if you recall, when he retired that day, he came back a couple times. We joked around there for all. He came back, then he retired. Came back, he retired, and people forget this. He actually came back to coach the Lakers for a little while, and I'll never forget this. It was, I forget what, this might have been 93, maybe something like that. We're having a very bad year. We fired, I don't know if it was Del Harris, whoever our coach was, but we fired our coach. Magic came on board. I think it was the last 10 games of the season. We played, I'll never forget, we played Milwaukee, his first game as head coach of the Lakers at the Forum. We blew, I don't know what the final score was. I bet we beat him by 30 if you went and look it up. Magic's first game as head coach of the Lakers. And if you go look it back up as well, I think we lost our last 9 games. So like the euphoria of Magic Johnson's our coach, the Forum is live and well again, and we just hammered Milwaukee, and then reality set back in the next day that this team doesn't have a whole lot of talent. And I think we lost like 9 in a row. But just to be around someone like that who has so much charisma and so much positivity, it was, and again, something that I just loved as a little kid. It's been a huge, huge highlight of my career.
Now, Ray, speaking of traveling, let me ask you this. Any chance you traveled with the Lakers in the 96 season?
Because
I'm asking for a reason.
Yeah, on occasion I would go to when I was with the Lakers. My boss, and if you listen to some other podcasts I've been on, I know I mentioned this on, I think the Andy Bernstein one, is my boss always sent me to the cities that he didn't want to go to.
Was Milwaukee one of them?
Was Milwaukee? Well, I'm not even sure. Did I?
Because there's the reason why. Here's why I'm asking. Because you and Dave Benz, unbeknownst to the two of you, may have crossed paths, but we're going to tell the story anyway because it's funny. Okay. So we're both working in Green Bay. We were starting out, basically our first jobs, and I was anchoring the weekday sportscast, and Dave was a reporter that day, and the Lakers were in town playing the Bucks. So we said, let's, Dave, go down and do a live shot from Bradley Center. We had the ability to do that from Green Bay to Milwaukee. It's not that far. Dave, you pick it up from here.
So I don't even know how we ended up with the person we ended up with, but we contacted Lakers media relations and we said, we'd like to interview a player. And I don't remember. I think we specifically actually requested Kobe. But you seem to think that that's just who they gave us. I think we requested Kobe.
Well, either way, we got him. We got Kobe Bryant.
That's a big get for you guys.
Yeah, and well, he wasn't playing, which is why they gave him to us. But his hair was about up to here, and Bozo over here, Dave Benz, didn't save the tape. So he could have had him and Kobe.
Dave, come on, you got to save that stuff on your.
He didn't know. We didn't know in '96. We didn't know what was going to happen.
Well, again, I'll share another. I was really fortunate when Kobe came out in the summer of '96 to work out for the Lakers. Jerry West walked into my office and said, "Hey, we're going to go work out this 17-year-old kid, high school kid coming to the draft." He grabbed me, John Black, and Mitch Kupchak, and we got in Jerry's car, drove over to Inglewood High School to watch Kobe work out one-on-one against Michael Cooper. Again, one of the things I'll never forget the rest of my life. And Michael Cooper is only a few years retired at this point in time. Michael was known as one of the greatest defenders in the history of the game. Jerry had him work out against Kobe for 10 minutes. He looked just like Michael. Fadeaway jumpers, tongue hanging out. Jerry turned around and looked at me and Mitch and John and said, "Let's get out of here. I've seen enough. This is better than anybody we have on our team now."
Oh,
give you an idea of the eye that Jerry West had for talent. He could tell when Kobe was 17 years old that he's going to be something really special.
Oh, that's funny. Then it all came full circle. My younger sister, Ray, ended up being the president of Kobe Inc.
Wow.
Down there in Orange County for a couple of years before the tragedy. So anyway, Dave?
So we want to ask you a couple of personal questions here. Before we, the obvious one is just taking a step back from your role, right, and what you do. How much do you pinch yourself? I mean, you've been over 30 years in the NBA. You've been around Magic and Kobe and Shaq, and obviously this Warriors dynasty, and now you've got a collection of rings to show for it. I mean,
now you're on this podcast. I mean, unbelievable.
This is probably the highlight.
It's not like on just a human level. Like, I mean, to just be like most people, it would blow their minds to be able to have had the career that you've had.
Yeah, I think I'm the most blessed person in the world. If you would have asked me, it's funny, when I started in probably in junior high school, I knew that I wanted to be a broadcaster. I wanted to be Dave Benz actually when I was in, but I couldn't realize quickly I couldn't talk that fast. I wanted to be growing up in LA. I wanted to be Chick Hearn or Vin Scully or Dick Enberg, all these guys that were great announcers in Southern California. But I just knew I wanted to work in sports somehow. And I always look at the whole journey. Like my first job was assistant PR director for the LA Lakers, which to think about is like how
good.
You hear all these stories about, go back to Wichita, like the kid that has to be the PR director for the single A Wichita Arrows that got one newspaper might be coming out to do a story on them once a week or whatnot. Here, my first job is with the Los Angeles Lakers, this iconic sports franchise. I've been really, really, really blessed, and I've had the opportunity to see, like you said, everything from Shaq and Kobe and Kareem, and to work with guys like Jerry West and Mitch Cup, Dr. Buss in L.A., Jeannie Buss, just some incredible human beings.
And you met presidents, Ray.
Yeah. And to come up here and do with Steph and KD and Klay and Draymond and the whole group, and to win 4 titles is it's funny. I joke around. Sean Livingston was one of our former players, and when he won his 3rd championship a few years ago, I went to look up how many players in NBA history have 3 championships or more. 1.7% of the players in NBA history have won 3 and here, I don't know how many staff members have, but to have 4 rings on my finger is pretty incredible. And I'm gonna. It's funny. Bob Myers says this all the time. Our general manager, president. It's really hard to enjoy the journey when you're in it. I think I'll really appreciate it more, when I retire in a few years and I can sit back and kind of look back on what I've been able to be a part of and really kind of exhale, because right now it's just so much day to day. You don't have a chance to really appreciate everything. But again, you would have asked 10-year-old Raymond Ritter, where would you want to be? Man, I want to work with the Lakers. I want to work in the NBA. Yeah. It's to live out that dream has just been, it's funny. Jerry West and others have always used the phrase, and Bob Myers uses it here: do something that you love and you'll never work a day in your life. And I work a lot of long hours, and throughout the course of the season, when the season starts at the end of September, like last year, I didn't have a day off then until the middle of June, and I mean Saturdays and Sundays, not a day off. So it's a labor of love, but I'm the most fortunate, luckiest guy in the world to be around some of the people I've had a chance to be around and to experience some of the really cool things that I have.
All right, so okay, now I'm going to debut this. This is as cheesy as it gets, Ray. So this is we're highbrow here. So this is our wheel of questions that we would not otherwise ask. So we've got 3 on here. I'm going to spin the wheel. The topics are love, money, and fame. Okay. So do you have one that you feel like you hope comes up?
This is the show kicker, by the way, Ray. I promise. This is the kicker. Yes.
I don't know. What the heck? Let's say fame, I guess, maybe.
That's the one you're hoping for. All right, let's see. Fame. No, it comes up on money. So the question on money is, we want to know what's in your wallet. So what is in your wallet right now at this exact moment?
You don't want to – I only know. You don't want to –
I'm going to guess $68.
This is actually not pretty. My wallet is when I go on the road – I actually put all of my receipts and everything in my wallet. So I got my dry cleaning stuff in here. I do have a few dollars. I got I don't know, there's a couple 20s in there. I got my Vax cards in here. So I got all 3 or 4 of those. I got another dry cleaning thing in here. My wallet is my place to put on my junk. So I never put my wallet in my pocket. I carry it in my backpack. So it's not a pretty sight. Let's put it that way.
Well, you're happy you didn't land on the love question, Ray, or that would have been really So that was.
We'll debate about what the love question should be, but we'll figure that out.
Yeah.
So, Tim, if listen, Ray, you've been great, and Tim,
Ray, really appreciate it.
Yeah, I feel like we could keep you here for a long, long time, but I just appreciate that you came on. I appreciate your friendship, and I have such great respect and admiration for all that you do, and you do it so flawlessly. So thank you for all you do, and I thank you from all the NBA fans as well, who really don't even know your name or what it is that you do, but they see the fruits of your labor on a regular basis. So it's been amazing to get to know you and get to see what you do.
Dave, I appreciate it. Tim, I appreciate it, and everything that you guys do to grow sports and grow our game and whatnot. We really appreciate it. It takes all of us in this ecosystem to make everything work, and we appreciate everything that you do as journalists or whatnot. And I appreciate your friends, especially you, Dave. I've known you for many, many years, and I just love everything about you and what you represent. So keep up the great work. When PressBox Party becomes the number 1 ranked podcast on Spotify and Google and all that stuff, I'll come on again at some point.
And by the way, our podcast is not yet sponsored, Ray, but so we're going to talk about products that we do use and endorse. So I've got the Duke Cannon pomade and the MacBook Pro. So those are, so if either one of those companies want to send us any checks or samples, we're open to that. Tim,
the only thing I have near me is Investing for Dummies.
I'll give you that $20 bill. That's
right. Yeah, that'd be the first part. Yeah, get some money to invest. So, and by the way, before we let you go, Ray, I will say that it's been most enjoyable, but I actually really hope that anybody that wants to get into the PR field like yourself gets a hold of this podcast, because I think while it's been entertaining and maybe informative, I think it's been very, very educational for young people today to hear what you have to say about your profession.
I guess
nobody does it better.
Yeah, the one thing I'd say at the end is if young kids, and I always try to stress this, is you mentioned about, I talk about how fortunate I am to be where I am. But like dream, man. Dave, you had a dream to be a broadcaster. Tim, you had a dream to get into media at some point in time. I had a dream to become involved in professional sports. It's like dream big, man. You can do anything you want to do. If you're willing to put in some sacrifices, work hard, have a positive attitude, you can literally do anything you want to do if you set your mind to it.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah, well, that's great stuff. Roy, appreciate it, man. We'll see you around Chase Center and, probably still see you in June, because this Warriors team looks like it's going to go on another run. I know it hasn't gotten out of the gates the way everybody would have hoped, but I think we all know the Warriors and what they're capable of doing. So,
hey, Ray, there's room on the thumb for one more.
Yeah. As someone said the other day, one for the thumb.
There you go.
You got it.
That's going to do it for episode 2 of the podcast party. Appreciate you checking it out. Next week, we may talk about the sport that is the most growing sport in all of America, but it's still TBD. But we'll, if you know what I do on my side gig, you might have an idea where I'm going with that. So we will be back with a fresh episode next week. Tim, you got any final words?
Nope. Goodbye. Good night. Good luck.
All right. Thank you.
All right, Ray. Take care.
You got it. Thank you.